The forgotten outpost captain. Marcus Reed adjusted his worn leather jacket as he stepped off the transport shuttle onto Station Omega-7. The metallic air tasted stale, recycled too many times through failing filters. This wasn't supposed to be a rescue mission. Intel had marked this sector as abandoned 3 months ago, but long-range sensors picked up a faint distress beacon buried in the static. The station corridors stretched endlessly, dimly lit by emergency power cells that flickered like dying stars. Marcus moved carefully through the debris-strewn passages, his boots echoing against twisted metal panels. Whatever happened here had been violent and quick. Blast marks scarred the walls, and entire sections had been vented to space. He turned a corner and froze. Huddled in an alcove between two collapsed support beams sat a figure wrapped in what looked like scraps of insulation material. The being was small, maybe 4 feet tall, with elongated limbs and skin that shimmered with an otherworldly blue-green hue. Her species was unknown to him, but her condition was universal. She was starving. Her large, dark eyes tracked his movement with the wariness of a cornered animal. Her breathing was shallow, labored. When she tried to shrink further into the shadows, Marcus noticed the way her ribs showed through her thin covering. She hadn't eaten in days, maybe weeks. Marcus slowly removed his emergency ration pack from his belt, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He'd learned long ago that kindness required patience, especially with species that had been hunted or enslaved. The galaxy was full of predators wearing civilized masks. He sat down on the cold floor, several feet away from her, and opened the ration pack. The smell of processed protein filled the air. Her nostrils flared slightly, and he saw her swallow hard. Hunger was breaking down her defenses. "I'm Marcus," he said softly, his voice carrying the gentle authority of someone who had commanded ships but never forgotten his humanity. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't respond, but her eyes followed his every movement as he broke the ration bar in half. He ate one piece slowly, showing her it was safe, then placed the other half on the floor between them. Not close enough to threaten her space, but within reach if she chose to trust him. Minutes passed. The station's ventilation system hummed. Weakly overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a loose panel rattled against the hull. She stared at the food with an intensity that made Marcus's chest tighten. When had she last felt safe enough to eat? Finally, her hand crept forward. Her fingers were delicate, almost translucent, with an inner light that pulsed faintly beneath her skin. She grabbed the ration and pulled it back to her chest, cradling it like something precious. She took a small bite, chewed carefully, then looked up at him with those impossibly large eyes. For the first time, something other than fear flickered in their depths. Hope, maybe, or simple gratitude for the first kindness she'd known in however long she'd been trapped here. "What happened to your people?" Marcus asked gently. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper, like wind through broken glass. "Raiders came. They took everyone who could work, left the weak ones to die." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd seen the aftermath of slavers before, entire colonies stripped of their populations, families torn apart for profit. But seeing it through her eyes, understanding that she'd been deemed worthless enough to abandon, filled him with a quiet fury. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zara," she whispered. "Well, Zara," Marcus said, standing slowly and extending his hand. "You're not alone anymore. Will you come with me?" She looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment, then reached up with trembling fingers and took it. The weight of trust. The journey back to Marcus's ship took longer than expected. Zara's legs were weak from malnutrition, and she had to stop frequently to rest. Marcus didn't rush her. He'd learned patience during his years commanding freight runs through the Outer Rim, where schedules mattered less than survival. His ship, the Wanderer, was a modified cargo hauler that had seen better decades. The hull bore scars from asteroid, impacts, and the occasional pirate encounter, but the life support systems were solid, and the medical bay was better equipped than most military vessels. Zara hesitated at the airlock threshold, her hand gripping the frame. The last ship she'd seen had brought death to her world. Marcus understood her fear without needing explanation. "This is my home," he said simply. "Has been for 8 years now. Nobody comes aboard unless I invite them." She stepped inside, her bare feet silent on the metal deck plates. The ship's interior was clean but lived in, with personal touches that spoke of a man who chose solitude but hadn't forgotten warmth. Books lined one wall, actual paper ones, and a small hydroponics bay grew fresh vegetables under full-spectrum lights. Marcus guided her to the medical bay and activated the diagnostic scanner. The results made his jaw clench. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, and several untreated injuries. Her left arm showed signs of an old break that had healed badly, probably during the raid on her station. "The scanner needs to touch your skin," Marcus explained, showing her the handheld device. "It won't hurt." Zara nodded and allowed him to run the scanner over her arms and torso. She flinched slightly when it passed over her ribs, but didn't pull away. Trust was being built one careful moment at a time. The medical synthesizer hummed to life, preparing a carefully balanced nutrient solution that wouldn't shock her system. Marcus had seen what happened when starving beings ate too much too quickly. Compassion without knowledge could be as dangerous as cruelty. "This will help your body recover," he said, handing her a warm cup of the solution. Small sips at first. While she drank, Marcus sent a coded message to his contact in the Human Relief Corps. Commander Jake Morrison had been running humanitarian missions for 15 years, and he'd know how to properly care for Zara's species once they reached a proper medical facility. The reply came back within minutes. "Bring her to Haven Station. We have specialists who can help." "Good work, Marcus." Zara noticed him at the communication console. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice stronger now, that she had some nourishment. "Somewhere safe," Marcus replied. "There are people who dedicate their lives to helping survivors like you. They'll know how to help you heal properly." She was quiet for a moment, processing this. "Why do you help me? Your species has no obligation to mine." The question struck Marcus as profoundly sad. That she would expect abandonment as the natural state of things spoke to how cruel the galaxy had been to her people. "Because it's right," he said simply. "Because nobody should die alone and forgotten. Because if we don't help each other, what's the point of sailing between the stars?" Zara studied his face with those luminous eyes, searching for deception or hidden motive. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her because she nodded slowly. "My people have a saying," she said. "The light of one star can guide a lost ship home. I think you are my star, Marcus Reed." Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen at her words. He'd been carrying guilt for months now, since he'd failed to reach the Kepler colony before the plague took hold. 7,000 people had died while he was 3 days out, his ship loaded with medical supplies that arrived too late. Maybe saving one life couldn't balance the scales, but it was a start. "Get some rest," he said gently. "We'll reach Haven Station in 36 hours. As Zara curled up in the medical bay's recovery bed, Marcus returned to the bridge and set course for Haven Station. Behind them, the abandoned station grew smaller, until it was just another point of light in the endless dark. The sanctuary of Haven Station emerged from the stellar void like a metallic flower blooming in space. Its rotating sections caught the light of the nearby star, creating patterns that danced across its hull. Marcus had visited Haven twice before, always impressed by humanity's stubborn insistence on building beauty even in the harshest environments. Zara pressed her face to the observation port, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's so big," she whispered. "How many people live there?" "About 50,000, Marcus replied, watching her reaction. "Humans, mostly, but we've got representatives from maybe 200 different species, all refugees, survivors, or people who chose to help them." The docking procedure was smooth, guided by controllers who had done this thousands of times. Haven Station specialized in taking in the broken and forgotten, the beings that other civilizations had written off as too expensive to save. Commander Jake Morrison met them at the airlock, his weathered face creasing into a smile when he saw Zara. Jake was in his 60s now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes still held the fire that had driven him to dedicate his life to humanitarian work. "You must be Zara," he said, crouching down to her eye level. "I'm Jake. We've been preparing a place for you." Zara looked to Marcus, seeking reassurance. He nodded encouragingly. "Jake's one of the good ones. He'll take care of you." The medical wing of Haven Station was a marvel of efficiency and compassion. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief medical officer, ran a full-spectrum analysis on Zara's physiology while explaining each step in gentle, simple terms. The results were encouraging. With proper nutrition and medical care, Zara would make a full recovery. "Her species has remarkable regenerative capabilities," Dr. Vasquez explained to Marcus privately. "The malnutrition slowed everything down, but her body is already starting to heal itself. Give her 6 months and she'll be as healthy as she ever was." Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He'd done right by her. But now came the harder question. What happened next? Jake seemed to read his thoughts. "We've got a small community of her people here," he said. "Survivors from other raids, other tragedies. She won't be alone." They found the community in one of Haven's residential sections, a cluster of living spaces adapted to accommodate different species' needs. The moment Zara saw others of her kind, her composure cracked. She ran to an elderly female who embraced her with tears streaming down her luminous face. They spoke in their own language, rapid and musical, full of questions and explanations. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but he understood the emotion. Relief, joy, the desperate need to connect with others who shared her experiences. "Her name is Elder Nissa," Jake translated. "She's been asking about survivors from Zara's colony for months. Zara is the first one we've found." Marcus watched the reunion with a mixture of happiness and melancholy. He'd saved her, brought her to safety, but now she was moving beyond his care into a larger community. It was what he'd wanted, what she needed, but it still felt like a kind of loss. Zara looked up from her conversation with Elder Nissa and walked back to Marcus. She took his hands in hers, her touch warm and gentle. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for choosing kindness when you could have chosen convenience." Marcus squeezed her hands gently. "What will you do now?" "Learn," she said with a small smile. "Heal. Help others who come after me. Elder Nissa says there are ships going out to search for more survivors. Maybe I can guide them to places where my people might be hiding." The idea of Zara helping other survivors filled Marcus with pride. She'd transformed from a broken, starving refugee into someone ready to pay forward the kindness she'd received. "The galaxy is lucky to have you in it," Marcus said. As he prepared to leave Haven Station, Marcus realized something had changed in him too. The guilt he'd carried about Kepler Colony was still there, but it no longer felt like a crushing weight. Sometimes saving the galaxy meant saving one person at a time. The ripple effect. 3 months later, Marcus received a message that changed everything. It came through Haven Station's relay network, encoded with Zara's personal signature. She'd found something, and she needed his help. The coordinates led him to a nebula on the edge of Rigel Sector, where sensor readings were unreliable and most ships avoided the area. Marcus pushed the Wanderer through the particle clouds, following the faint signal that Zara's people used to mark safe havens. What he found took his breath away. Hidden in the nebula's heart was a massive derelict ship, easily 10 times the size of Haven Station. It was ancient, its hull covered in the same bioluminescent patterns that marked Zara's skin. This wasn't just any ship. It was an ark, a generational vessel from her people's distant past. Zara's voice crackled over the communication system. "Marcus, you came." "You knew I would," he replied, maneuvering the Wanderer toward the ark's docking bay. "What did you find?" "Everything," she said, and he could hear the wonder in her voice. "The history of my people, the reason we were scattered across the galaxy, and thousands of survivors in cryogenic sleep." The ark's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, most of them dark and lifeless. But in the ship's core, Zara had discovered something miraculous. Row upon row of cryogenic pods, each one containing a member of her species. The ship's automated systems had kept them alive for centuries, waiting for someone to wake them. "The raiders didn't just attack our recent colonies," Zara explained as they moved through the chamber. "They've been hunting us for generations, forcing us to scatter and hide. This ship was our ancestors' attempt to preserve our species." Marcus ran his hands over the smooth surface of one pod, watching the gentle rise and fall of the being inside. "How many?" 12,000, Zara said softly. 12,000 souls waiting to be reborn. The magnitude of the discovery was staggering. An entire civilization preserved in sleep, waiting for the right moment to awaken. But bringing them back would require resources that Marcus couldn't provide alone. "We need to contact Haven Station," he said. "Jake will know how to handle this." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Haven Station dispatched its largest vessels to the nebula, along with medical teams, engineers, and specialists in cryogenic revival. The operation required precise coordination and massive resources, but the Human Relief Corps had never backed down from a challenge. The first pods were opened on a Tuesday. Marcus watched as centuries-old sleepers took their first breaths. In the modern galaxy, their eyes opening to find Zara's face smiling down at them. She had become their beacon, their guide back to the land of the living. Each revival was a celebration, a small victory against the forces that had tried to erase her people from existence. Children who had been sleeping since before Marcus's great-grandfather was born took their first steps in artificial gravity. Elders who remembered the old songs taught them to youngsters who had never heard them. Dr. Vasquez worked tirelessly to ensure each revival went smoothly. "Their physiology adapted to the sleep state," she explained to Marcus during one of their brief breaks. "It's actually made them more resilient. They're going to be healthier than we initially hoped." Commander Morrison was coordinating housing arrangements. "We're going to need to expand Haven Station," he said, but he was grinning as he said it. "This is the biggest rescue operation in human history. The Council's already approved emergency funding." Marcus found himself thinking about the simple act of sitting beside a starving stranger and offering food. How had that one moment of compassion led to the salvation of an entire species? The question haunted him in the best possible way. As the last of the sleepers was revived, Zara found Marcus standing in the observation deck, watching the fleet of ships that now surrounded the ancient ark. 12,000 lives, she said, standing beside him. "All because one human chose to see me as a person worth saving." Marcus shook his head. "I just did what anyone should do." "No," Zara said firmly. "You did what anyone could do. That's what makes humanity special. You turn small kindnesses into great changes." The new dawn. 1 year later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of New Eden, the colony ship that had become home to Zara's people. The massive vessel was humanity's gift to a species that had nearly been lost to the darkness between stars. Built with the most advanced technology available, it was designed to be both sanctuary and homeland, capable of supporting a growing population for generations. The transformation was remarkable. What had begun with one starving refugee in a forgotten corridor had become a thriving community of over 15,000 beings. The survivors from the Ark had adapted quickly to their new existence, their natural resilience combining with human technology to create something unprecedented. Zara approached him carrying a small bundle, her movements careful and proud. "Marcus, I want you to meet someone." She pulled back the soft fabric to reveal a tiny face, the skin glowing with the same inner light as her own. The baby's eyes were alert and curious, already showing the intelligence that marked her species. "Her name is Hope," Zara said softly. "She's the first of our kind born in freedom for over a century." Marcus felt his throat tighten as he looked down at the infant. This child would grow up in a universe where her people were no longer hunted, no longer scattered and afraid. She would know safety, community, and the love of a species that had been given a second chance. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's the future," Zara replied. "Our future, made possible by your kindness." Around them, the colony ship hummed with life. Children played in the recreation areas while their parents worked in the ship's various departments. Some had joined the crew, their unique physiology and abilities making them valuable contributors to the ship's operation. Others had become teachers, sharing the preserved knowledge of their ancient civilization. Elder Nessa had established a council of survivors, creating a democratic government that blended their traditional ways with practical necessities. They were no longer just refugees. They were citizens of their own floating nation. The bridge. Doors slid open and Commander Morrison entered with a smile. "Marcus, we just received word from the Outer Rim. 3 more survivor colonies have been located, thanks to the information from the Ark's databases." "How many?" Marcus asked. "Nearly 2,000 more souls," Jake replied. "They're requesting immediate evacuation. I was hoping you'd be willing to lead the rescue mission." Marcus looked at Zara, who was nodding encouragingly. "Go," she said. "There are others out there who need what you gave me. The chance to be seen, to be valued, to be saved." As Marcus prepared to leave New Eden, he realized that his life had found its true purpose. He was no longer just a freight captain moving cargo between worlds. He had become something more important, a bridge between the lost and the found, between despair and hope. The Wanderer had been refitted with better medical facilities and additional crew quarters. His team now included Dr. Vasquez, 2 rescue specialists, and a cultural liaison from Zara's people. They were equipped to handle larger rescue operations and more complex situations. Standing at the airlock, Marcus turned back to see Zara holding her daughter, surrounded by the thriving community that had grown from a single act of compassion. The sight filled him with a profound sense of completion. "Remember," Zara called out as he prepared to board his ship, "sometimes the most important thing you can do is sit beside someone and show them they're not alone." Marcus nodded, understanding the deeper truth in her words. In a galaxy filled with wonders and terrors, the greatest power wasn't in advanced technology or superior weapons. It was in the simple decision to treat another being with dignity and kindness. As the Wanderer pulled away from New Eden, beginning its journey toward the next group of survivors, Marcus smiled. The universe was vast and often cruel, but it was also full of possibilities. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, there were people waiting to be found, waiting for someone to sit beside them and prove they weren't alone. The rescue had become a mission. The mission had become a calling, and the calling would continue, one saved life at a time, until every lost soul found their way home.